You're with me here. I'm Warren Sprouse. You're on the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m., and we're looking at life through a biblical lens. We want you to join us at thebibleforum.net. Tonight we're going to continue our series of 5 things you should know about the faith of one of our presidential candidates. We've been through 3 or 4 of them. Tonight it's Mike Huckabee's turn. I'm sure there's other people who have said Muck Huckabee as well. 5 things you need to know or should know about Mike Huckabee's faith. Mike was a pastor. I always had the feeling that he'd been a pastor for years, 20, 30 years before he started doing this. Of course, he's not that old, but, guys start young. He pastored for 12 years. 12 years is enough to give you credibility. It's not really enough to say that you were, dedicated to the job. But he was in Arkansas, and apparently he had more than one church in that 12-year period. Later, he became governor of Arkansas. If he were to be elected, he would be the first pastor to grace the Oval Office. James Garfield was a lay minister in what was called then the Christian Church. It's called Disciples of Christ now. And Jimmy Carter, you know Jimmy. Jimmy was a well-known Baptist Sunday school teacher. Of course, if you watch Jimmy Carter, listen to his view of the world, especially Israel, he wasn't teaching anything from the Old Testament very much. Doesn't seem to know too much. But Jimmy Carter goes to a Baptist church that's part of the most liberal Baptist association in the country, if not in the world. They broke from the Southern Baptists, started their own. I've forgotten now what they call themselves. We have one in town here that is also a member of this. They just can't stand anybody that believes what the Bible has to say. Mike led the First Baptist Church in Texarkana, Arkansas, between 1986 and 1992. And at that point, he became the youngest Arkansas Baptist State Convention president. And he says that while he was in that post is when he started thinking about public office. He was apparently able to calm differences between moderates and conservatives in the Baptists there in Arkansas, which, this may sound unkind, but when you talk about moderates, you're talking about people who really don't believe the Bible. They are progressives in the religious world and conservatives, and there's really no way to get the two of them together. But Mike apparently was able to calm the differences. He was a peacemaker. It was sort of like Jesus, making peace between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, You don't remember that? No. He is a favorite of evangelicals. He is one of us, as they say. He gets a high rating from evangelicals in the various polls. He's the one who stimulated the Chick-fil-A thing, to come out and buy Chick-fil-A and honk your horn or whatever, and support of the beleaguered Dan Cathy and his organization. Of course, Cathy came out later and said he would never do this again. It wasn't good for business, simple as that. Religion is one thing, business is something else. As a political leader, Mike says he believes that people are entitled to what they believe. He said, "It was never my desire to push my position or a particular religious doctrine through any form of official channels of government. The spiritual convictions should certainly be reflected in one's worldview, the way you approach problems and the perspective that you have, but not that you would now shove this down somebody's throat." He says, "My faith is my life. It defines me. My faith does not influence my decisions. It drives them." Real faith, he says, makes us humble and mindful not of the faults of others, but of our own. It makes us less judgmental as we see others in the same frailties that we have. Faith gives us strength in the face of injustice and motivates us to do our best for the least of us. Well said, Michael. Christians get a bad rap as being judgmental because we are against sin. But so is the Bible, so was Jesus. But Christians are really not judgmental. We honestly don't care what you do. It doesn't affect us one way or another. But we care in the sense that these things are destructive to you, to your body, and to society. And we'd really like for you to know that. Mike says, I usually read some Psalms and some of the New Testament each day. I have a little pocket Bible that I take with me. It's in my briefcase, and usually in the mornings, either on the campaign bus or on a plane, wherever I can find the time, I'm going to spend that reading the Word of God. On abortion, he said, I support and have always supported passage of a constitutional amendment to protect the right to life. I applaud the Supreme Court's recent decision in Gonzalez versus Carhart forbidding the gruesome practice of partial birth abortions. On church and state, the First Amendment requires that expressions of faith be neither prohibited nor preferred. I think that the state ought to give students exposure to both or to all points of view, and I would hope that would be all points, including evolution. I think schools ought to be fair. Darwinianism is not an established scientific fact. It's not. It's not. He also says that reclaiming a nation for Christ doesn't mean coercing people to be of a particular faith. It means, quote, that we would reflect what Christ taught, what he reflected, and that is compassion and love for everybody. On the death penalty, he says, I believe some crimes deserve it, but that doesn't mean I like doing it. I do believe it should be an option, but carrying out the death penalty was unquestionably the worst part of my job as governor. 17 times I sat by a phone with an open line to the death chamber and gave the verbal order for the lethal injection. I never slept those nights. The night of an execution is the loneliest night in a governor's life. On homosexuality and gay marriage, I support and have always supported the passage of a federal constitutional amendment that defines marriage as the union between one man and one woman. As president, I would fight for passage of this amendment. My personal belief is that marriage is between one man and one woman for life. I don't think it's a radical view to say we're going to affirm marriage. I think the radical view is to say that we're going to change the definition of marriage so that it can mean two men, two women, a man, three women, a child, a man, an animal. It doesn't matter, it goes on. I support both the Human Rights Amendment and a marriage amendment. And the reason I do this is because I think we need to codify our Constitution, which has been acceptable and accepted view of life and what marriage means for over 200 and some years. Mike Huckabee, running for president. Do we vote for him because we believe the same things he believes about God and the Bible, or do we vote for him because we think he'd be the best leader overall? That's what you have to decide in a polling place.